Persian Gulf, January 27th, 2026, or 8:12 a.m. The sea appeared calm. Commercial traffic moved as usual. No visible signs of crisis. But far from cameras and official statements, a decision had already been made. From Washington, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, confirmed that he had ordered the deployment of additional U.S. warships to waters near Iran. This was not a routine maneuver. It was not a scheduled exercise. It was a direct response to what the White House described as a rapidly deteriorating security environment. The order was precise and unambiguous. Reinforce naval presence, reposition key assets, remain ready to respond without delay. Trump spoke in firm terms. He warned that Iran would face serious consequences if it continued actions threatening regional stability and the safety of maritime routes. At the same time, he emphasized that a diplomatic agreement was still possible. A carefully calculated message, pressure and negotiation delivered together. But in naval strategy, movements speak louder than words. At 09:34 a.m., internal reports confirmed that U.S. naval groups had begun adjusting their courses. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, and cruisers do not move without intent. Every nautical mile signals purpose. Every formation at sea is closely watched in Tehran. Inside the Pentagon, maps of the Persian Gulf filled with new markings. Operating zones were adjusted. Sea lanes recalculated. Defensive systems elevated to a higher alert level. U.S. Central Command, responsible for the region, coordinated the repositioning of naval forces capable of responding within minutes. For Washington, the official justification was the protection of allies and freedom of navigation. For Iran, the interpretation was different. More warships meant more pressure, more surveillance, less room for error. At 11:18 a.m., Tehran issued its first public response. Iranian officials stated that the country would not be intimidated and that any foreign military presence near its waters would be closely monitored. The tone was firm but controlled. No one wanted to be seen as the first to cross an invisible line. Meanwhile, in the Gulf, radar systems rotated continuously. Maritime patrol aircraft expanded their coverage. Crews received updated instructions. Uniforms prepared. Weapons armed, but silent. This was not yet combat, but it was no longer routine. By 12:07 p.m., analysts reached a clear conclusion. This was one of those days when an order issued thousands of miles away could reshape the balance of an entire region. Because when more warships move toward one of the most sensitive points on Earth, the real question is no longer whether something might happen. The real question is when, and how fast everything can escalate when it does. 2:41 p.m. Inside the Pentagon, the situation shifted from monitoring to execution. Large digital maps filled the main briefing room. Icons representing U.S. warships slowly moved across the Persian Gulf. Every update came in real time. Every change in speed, heading, and formation was recorded. At the center of the room, senior military commanders reviewed intelligence feeds. U.S. Central Command confirmed that additional naval assets were now operating within striking distance of key maritime corridors near Iran. This was no longer theoretical. At 12:58 p.m., secure communications linked Washington directly with commanders at sea. The message was brief. Maintain posture, avoid provocation, respond decisively if challenged. At sea, the orders translated into action. Destroyers adjusted their spacing. Air defense systems transitioned to heightened readiness. Carrier-based aircraft remained on standby, pilots already briefed on potential contingencies. Every system was active. Every crew member knew the stakes. In Tehran, the movement did not go unnoticed. At 1:17 p.m., Iranian radar stations confirmed increased naval density in the northern Persian Gulf. Surveillance aircraft were scrambled. Naval patrols were ordered to shadow U.S. formations at a safe but visible distance. Inside Iran's national security apparatus, the assessment was blunt. The United States was not posturing, it was positioning. Iranian officials understood the message clearly. The arrival of additional warships reduced reaction time on both sides. Any incident, even a miscalculation, could escalate in minutes. Publicly, Tehran maintained a controlled tone. Privately, commanders evaluated worst-case scenarios. By 1:46 p.m., U.S. naval forces had completed their repositioning. Sea lanes near the Strait of Hormuz were now under constant surveillance. Every vessel entering or exiting the area was tracked. The Gulf had become a pressure chamber. On U.S. warships, crews remained at their stations longer than usual. Briefings were repeated. Rules of engagement reviewed line by line. No mistakes, no hesitation. This was the phase commanders feared most, the waiting. Not war, but not peace. At 2:09 p.m., analysts flagged increased electronic activity along Iran's coastline. Radar emissions intensified. Communications traffic spiked. Nothing overt, nothing hostile, but enough to raise concern. The message moving through U.S. command channels was consistent. Stay ready, stay calm, do not blink. Because history had shown that moments like this rarely announce themselves loudly. They unfold quietly through small decisions made under pressure. By 2:27 p.m., the Gulf felt different, not because shots had been fired, but because every actor involved understood how little time separated restraint from escalation. More ships, more eyes, more weapons within range. And in an environment this tight, a single signal, a single order, or a single misread movement could transform a political decision into a military confrontation. The pieces were now in place. The only unanswered question was whether the next move would come from diplomacy or from the sea. 2:41 p.m. The first anomaly appeared on a secondary radar feed. At first it looked insignificant, a brief spike, a signal that could have been atmospheric interference, but within seconds, analysts realized it was something else. Electronic activity along Iran's coastline had changed. Radar emissions intensified. Fire control frequencies flickered on and off. Communications traffic surged across encrypted channels. Nothing was launched, nothing was announced, but something had shifted. At 2:44 p.m., the alert reached U.S. naval commanders in the Gulf. Iranian coastal sensors were no longer passive. They were active, tracking, testing response times. This was the moment every planner anticipates and fears. The transition from posture to intent. On U.S. warships, the response was immediate. Combat information centers filled with quiet urgency. Voices lowered. Movements precise. No panic. No raised tones. Rules of engagement were reviewed again, not from memory, from the page. At 2:47 p.m., carrier-based aircraft were brought to a higher readiness state. Pilots strapped in, engines warmed, launch crews standing by. The Gulf was no longer just monitored. It was measured, second by second. In Tehran, the atmosphere was equally tense. At 2:52 p.m., senior Iranian commanders convened inside a secure operations room. Screens showed U.S. naval formations in real time. Every ship, every course correction. The assessment was blunt. The American presence had compressed the decision window. Any response would have to be immediate. Any hesitation could mean losing control of the narrative. Iranian commanders knew they were being watched, and they knew the Americans knew it too. By 2:58 p.m., naval patrol craft were ordered closer to the edge of controlled waters, not to engage, not to threaten, but to be seen, a calculated move, visibility without action, pressure without escalation. But in an environment this tight, visibility itself becomes a message. At 3:03 p.m., U.S. sensors detected multiple fast-moving contacts briefly accelerating before slowing again. No weapons activated, no direct approach. A test, the kind of move designed to provoke a reaction. None came. U.S. commanders held their positions. The minutes stretched. Every side waited for the other to blink. At 3:09 p.m., analysts monitoring electronic signatures noticed something new. Several Iranian systems went silent at once. Radar emissions dropped. Communications paused. Silence can be louder than noise. To experienced commanders, it often means preparation. By 3:14 p.m., the Gulf felt different, not because of what had happened, but because of what hadn't. Too many assets in too small a space. Too many decisions compressed into too little time. One misread signal, one delayed response. One order given too late or too early. This was no longer a political standoff. It was a countdown without a visible clock, and somewhere between restraint and reaction, the next move was already forming. The first confirmed alert cut through the silence. Multiple sensors registered the same change at once. Unusual emissions, brief spikes, then rapid movement, the kind of signature that forces a decision. Within seconds, combat information centers aboard U.S. warships shifted from observation to execution. Screens refreshed, data locked, tracks classified. This was no longer monitoring, it was response. At 3:18 p.m., commanders received confirmation that the activity originated from coastal zones already under surveillance. No public announcement, no warning broadcast, only internal acknowledgement that the threshold had been crossed. Orders moved fast but calmly. Defensive posture first, no hesitation, no overreaction. At 3:19 p.m., U.S. naval systems activated layered defenses. Aircraft already airborne adjusted their holding patterns. Surface units aligned to cover key sectors. Everything unfolded according to pre-planned contingencies that existed long before this day. Nothing dramatic, nothing chaotic, just precision. In Washington, updates reached the Situation Room in real time. The president was informed in seconds, not minutes. The assessment was brief. The risk had materialized. The response would remain controlled. No escalation beyond what was necessary. No message louder than required. At 3:24 p.m., the situation stabilized. No further hostile signals, no continued movement, no additional provocations. The window closed as quickly as it had opened. By 3:31 p.m., analysts confirmed what commanders already sensed. Whatever had been tested, whatever line had been approached, it had stopped short of open confrontation. The message had been delivered without a single shot fired. At sea, the U.S. formation maintained course. No celebration, no announcement, just steady movement through one of the most sensitive waterways on Earth. At 3:46 p.m., internal reports marked the incident as contained. Total duration, 29 minutes. From initial alert to full stabilization. In Tehran, officials issued no immediate statement. In Washington, no press conference followed. Silence returned to the Gulf. But it was not the same silence as before, because every actor involved understood what those minutes represented. Not war, not peace, but a demonstration of how fast posture becomes pressure, and pressure becomes consequence. On January 27, 2026, additional warships moved closer to Iran. No missiles launched. No bases struck. Yet the balance shifted all the same. Because sometimes the most powerful outcome of military movement is not what happens, but what is proven to be possible in less than half an hour.